The ethics of AI captures the attention of many different audiences. It's a big, important question. I teach the subject, so I'm an invested member of that conversation. For businesses who consider the ethics of AI, one thing I would recommend is to treat it as a frontier and to treat it as an advantage to be ethical, basically. Because if you look at the largest AI product in the world today, ChatGPT, it exists in part because of the ethics of AI. Chatbots, as you may remember, if you've been on the internet in the last decade, AI chatbots were released into the world and quickly became toxic. You know, they would spew out things that no business would want to put their name to. In fact, big companies like Microsoft had to back off of. And so by some measures, you know, ChatGPT, one of the kind of accomplishments there is to try and manage, and there's still work to do, the kind of ethical threats or the worries of being deeply offensive or to recreating misinformation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I can't underline enough, this is not a finished project. You know, these Microsoft, Anthropic, OpenAI, the companies that have major AI products with millions of users do have far more work to do to make them kind of trustworthy. But the long and the short of it is, if you're a business interested in AI, it's important to remember that it's a socio-technical tool. So it's not purely technical, it has a social component. And so you have to treat it in a way that, you know, your customers, socialize it in a way that your customer is familiar maybe with some of the inherent risks or the ways that it could make an error or it could be biased. And it doesn't mean there aren't uses, but you just have to kind of respect those challenges if you're offering a product that, you know, is conversational, let's say, but the ethics depends sort of on the use, obviously. You know, in logistics, you wouldn't have to worry about a racist chatbot or something like that. The best hack I have for businesses thinking about using AI, but curious about how to separate truth from fiction in terms of what it can do or hype from reality, is to let go of the neural metaphor. What does that mean? We think about AI tools as cognitive, right? That's what the imagery suggests. That's what the newspapers suggest. Sometimes that's what the research papers suggest. So if an example is a large language model might hallucinate, is the term that practitioners use. That's a very kind of, that implies that it's cognitive. The hack is, if you think about it more like logistics and less like cognition, then you can start to see it as what it is. It doesn't need to be sentient. It doesn't even need to be human to be very powerful. And so that as kind of bedrock in terms of one's intuitions about what can these tools be used for, what can't these tools be used for, I think is an important differentiator in terms of, separating fact from fiction. So if you hear hallucinate, think error, because companies know how to manage error. They don't necessarily know how to manage hallucination. So it's actually not it's neither kind of factually accurate nor useful for businesses wanting to use these things. I think another piece of advice, because that's quite high level, a piece of advice I'd give for companies trying to understand the kind of risks involved or the opportunities involved in using these tools is to start small in a way. Think about one area of one's business that is kind of available to these sort of statistical tools. And equally, I encourage businesses to do the opposite. Write down what I call a decomputerization statement. What is the part of your business that cannot be automated? Because that's actually a value proposition in the world today. There's going to be more competition for the things that anybody can do. But if you have something that involves the actual humans involved in your business, and you can capture and articulate that and honor it in a way, and here in New Zealand, it may be cultural, it may be historical, it may be, there's lots of different things that would give a brand its identity or a business its identity. But if you can capture that, I think it helps as a kind of counterbalance to this excitement about automation. You need the best of the human and the best of these automated tools. So AI right now is dominated by a small handful of companies. And it would be better to have more competition. It's tough to disagree with that. So to have a kind of CERN for AI, a global partnership that advances the field and kind of polices bad doers would be a useful intervention. That is kind of unfolding as we speak, those conversations. In my mind, the idea of global governance is not a panacea. It has its strengths and its weaknesses. And so part of what I'm getting excited about more and more is the kind of countercultural responses to AI. So if you look historically at the Industrial Revolution, one of the things that kind of stretch of history helped to formalize is the weekend. If we have these tools, if we have this technological innovation, we can have social innovation in response. And so in terms of kind of regulating AI, I think we need to be more bullish and more active. And this comes down to individual businesses about living the sort of future that we want. So that might be, a 4-day work week or a 3-day weekend. It might be not new ideas, things like childcare, government protection, childcare to give people more time to do the work that they want to do. I think what the letter that called for a pause in AI got wrong is that it was sort of arbitrary. Why 6 months? Why not more or less? And sort of infeasible, or very infeasible, because people aren't going to sign on for that. Now, the irony in my mind is that AI is premised, the value is premised on kind of a higher degree of precision, that you're able to kind of spot the useful patterns that you can derive to do things. And so what I think should change is we have to think about pausing in a more precise way. We have to think about what are the uses of AI that maybe deserve a lifetime pause or a moratorium or a ban. I'll give you an example. In London, municipality there has recently voted to ban facial recognition technologies in their community because they say it's not worth our time to try and get this right. We just don't want it. I support the kind of instinct to slow down and to deal with this with judgment, quality, deliberation, and judgment. But because the idea of a 6-month pause is sort of arbitrary, the energy, I think, should go towards targeted kind of prohibitions on tools that there's too much to gain from the good side that we don't need to kind of dwell on the uses that are going to be provably dangerous, like facial recognition technologies in certain arenas. To give you another example of that, like things like predictive policing are empirically just like unsound. They're not good ideas. You cannot predict crime. Like that's a distortion of the phenomenon. People turn to crime for other reasons. They turn to crime. So you want to deal with the source of the problem and not kind of sharpen the tools that would be punishing people for things that are actually solvable, like poverty or unhoused populations or whatever it might be. If we can give the idea of a pause a little more precision, then yes, I would support it. And the precision I would push for is to not get into kind of predictive policing and predictive societies in terms of our social lives, because our social lives are fluid. We don't know yet who we will become, and we have to kind of honor that ambiguity.